So a temple was already under construction. The family believed Nauvoo was a place they could work, prepare, live out their lives, and await the second coming. I mean,
Again, yeah, they were apocalypticists. They
yeah.
believed the end of the world was coming soon.
And that
Yeah.
Nauvoo was a place where they could live comfortably and protect their family. They waited for Jesus to come again.
Well, and that might answer my earlier question. Why was Edward willing to go? Well, because he thought that heaven would be upon the earth within, not only within his lifetime, probably within the next decade.
Shortly. Like he was making extreme choices in order to save his family.
Yeah. Ugh,
Right?
ugh.
Okay. So this is what cousin Dennis says next. This was a happy time for the Robinson family. At Nauvoo, 13-year-old Richard spent one idyllic summer along the banks of the Mississippi. He was 5 years older. This is a fun comment that cousin
Hmm.
Dennis says. He was 5 years older than Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, who lived 60 miles downriver at
Hmm.
Hannibal, Missouri, and it would be 30 plus years before the world met Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn.
Hmm.
But boyhood doesn't last, and it was only a short time before Richard's youth was permanently snatched away.
Hmm.
So just his writing, cousin Dennis, this is an
Yeah.
example. There's other parts where I was reading to, my 18-year-old daughter. There are portions of this history where Dennis paints a picture with his words, and it's lovely. So
He's a good storyteller.
yeah, he's just referring to Mark Twain. Richard was 5 years older than him, and it would have been many more years before he would create these characters of Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. But here's Richard living on the banks of the Mississippi River, just like Samuel Clemens did when he was a boy, based those characters on that experience of living right on the river. It's easy to imagine, 13 years old, kind of what his
Mhm.
experiences might have been, right?
Yeah.
So this is what it says next. Threats of violence hung heavy in the Nauvoo air, and talk of a Mormon exodus began to erupt everywhere. Foreboding dread and uncertainty were faced daily. Amid the normal freedoms and independence of youth, it would be crucial for a young man like Richard to confide in friends or family and gradually find his way to maturity, to feel and face the tensions of that time. But Richard had little freedom and no time. And so we're going to get into the turmoil that erupts in Nauvoo. Those listening that are familiar with Mormon history know what's coming, but those that don't, and I'll just jump to a punchline. It's not a surprise or a spoiler of any kind because this is history, but Joseph Smith, a leader of the Mormon people, let me backtrack. This is the summer of 1843 that he had this idyllic summer. Summer of 1844, Joseph Smith was murdered. And so much turmoil happens. And within less than 2 years, the entire town is trying to leave. Of course, the Robinsons have no idea this is coming. They
Yeah.
genuinely believe as they're building this beautiful two-story house that this is where they're going to live. And they're
Yeah. They really believe this is where they're going to spend the rest of their lives.
rest of their lives. But, when we talk about that idyllic summer for Richard in the summer of 1843, it's not as though there weren't things percolating throughout the city. There were, but he would have been fairly
As a preteen or an early teen, he wouldn't have awareness of most of that stuff.
not at
Yeah.
all. And so it's not like the murder of Joseph Smith came out of nowhere. There were a lot of events leading up
Yeah.
to that happening.
Yeah. And anyone who wants to know about that, there are 1,000 other sources out there to learn about the final days of Joseph Smith's life.
I will recommend two books. One of them I have here, The Kingdom of Nauvoo, The Rise and Fall of a Religious Empire on the American Frontier by Benjamin Park. The title really says it all.
Yeah.
It's excellent. It contains all the detail you need if you want to understand how Joseph Smith ended up being murdered. Another book that I read that I haven't heard people talk about, but I ended up really appreciating it. It gave some detail that I hadn't heard very many other places, but it's called American Crucifixion. I don't remember the author's name, but it's about Nauvoo and what
Mhm.
led to Joseph Smith being killed. But definitely, I recommend Kingdom of Nauvoo and several other books where you can learn more about why exactly it was that Joseph Smith ended up being murdered. But it didn't come out of nowhere. So by the time the summer of 1844 happened and Joseph Smith is killed, and there is so much unrest in the city, it wasn't unexpected. So when Cousin Dennis is describing Richard, and he has 13 years old, he has this idyllic summer on the banks of the Mississippi River, they literally were on the brink of events started to occur where not even a 13-year-old boy could avoid knowing that something was going wrong. So this is what it says. For the Robinsons, Nauvoo was a city of both beautiful promise and profound calamity. It was the Zion of their hopes, where they anticipated an imminent second coming of Christ, and it became a lifelong, sad reminder of family loss and sacrifice. The Robinsons' sturdy new red brick home and any struggles undergone to obtain it must at first have seemed well worth the costs. But storms of change grew dark and ominous. The much anticipated peace and prosperity when they sailed from England soon deteriorated into turbulence and tragedy. And on June 27th, 1844, shortly after 5 o'clock p.m., the prophet Joseph and his brother Hiram were killed at Carthage by an angry mob.